Welcome. We're going to spend about 25 minutes going over various different elements of the dAnalyzer product. This is the current version, version 5, and it almost doubles the size of previous versions. So this new version introduces accounts receivable, accounts payable, and general ledger. And perhaps even more importantly, it introduces something called custom fields, which is essentially the ability to add calculated fields like Excel formulas to create your own columns, and then use those in combination with both features in dAnalyzer as well as with the data that dAnalyzer presents to you. So it's a very powerful feature that we'll talk a little bit towards the end of the presentation about. To start out with, let's just do a quick overview and just show you I'm logged into ABC Electronics, although I can be logged into multiple different companies. I'm going to start with a details module, and you'll see, we'll just tuck that up so we have a little bit more space, that in the details modules, what we're looking at here, if we refresh the data, is fields that have to do with individual lines from sales history invoices, or if we are in purchase analysis, purchase order history, or if we're in accounts receivable, invoice and payment lines. So again, we're pulling information about those lines based on a date selection criteria. You'll see there's quite a number of fields available in the default grid that we present to you, but there's many fields available in our scrolling list here that gives you access to these additional fields, and we can drag fields in or drag fields off, sort of customize how we want things to work here. For example, if we wanted city, we just find the city column, drag that over, and now that's an available criteria in the reports, or an available piece of data in the reports. Lots of things I can do with this. This particular type of grid, a detailed grid, can be sorted, can be multiple sorted. So within customer I sort by part number, and then within part number I sort by committed quantity. That's just sorting as one way to do things. You can also group. So here I can drag the city column up, and that now automatically groups dynamically based on the city of the customer who made the purchase. Handles full ship to, bill to information as well. Sorting and grouping is great. You can also filter. So for example, if I was looking specifically for Burlington, I just type that in and it automatically selects those records for Burlington. So it's a great inquiry as well as your capabilities of reporting. I can also, within that, go even further. If I'm looking at a particular thing, I might be interested in only those that belong in the category COM. So I'm filtering as I go to see specific kinds of information very, very quickly, which is quite nice. Let's remove that filter. And we'll see when we remove that filter, we come back to all the records that are there. What we can do from here basically at any point is print. So if we decide, well, we've got the right totals, let's add one more total while we're in here. Let's add a count per customer. We'll just right click and choose count. So now we know the number of times, number of invoice lines per that item, per that customer. Let's go ahead and just click on print. What you see when you print basically is that it prints to a print preview window, similar to what you're familiar with in BusinessVision. So this gives us full access to a printable report, and we can of course customize this simply by dragging and dropping individual lines on and off the report, or individual columns on and off the report, which is again very powerful. So for example, if I decide, well, there's a bit too much crammed onto this report, I'll just close that, and let's remove, for example, let's say product code, and we also don't need salesperson details. Print again, and this just dynamically refreshes the report to show you information that you're particularly interested in, and allows a little bit more space. One thing you might decide to do, let's drag city back here, is instead of printing, oftentimes what you want to do is send this information to Excel. To do that, just click on export, and that exports that information to Excel, automatically opens up Excel, and now we have a row column report that has all that information that we had in our individual report. Excel is extremely useful, obviously, and we had a lot of requests to be able to quickly get information to Excel without having to go through the report screen and unformat things and align numbers and so on. So again, that's very easy to do and very useful, and you can do it with any of the reports that you're going to see in this presentation. One question you might be asking as you go forward with this is, you're designing these reports and you're coming up with your totals and you're getting things organized the way you want. Do you have to do that every time you want to see different kinds of information? Because I might have dozens of different types of sales history reports that I want to look at. And the answer to that is no. Basically, to save these, just click on Save Layout, and let's call this Basic SA Report, and we'll save. And what you'll see is that that becomes an available layout. And you can load that using the load function, or for convenience you can click on the layouts, and this gives you a list of all available layouts within that module. The idea here is that you could have dozens of different reports all set up exactly the way you want them, and then just load your data and select between them to load up the reports that you're after to view and to print and so on. One thing that makes this even more powerful is that you can also filter these grids in a wide variety of ways. One way to filter basically is to click the filter button and just select the particular thing you're after. Maybe I want to see just FX280. Another way to filter is, instead of filtering that way or in combination with that, you can also filter entering into these fields. So here I might want to say I'm interested in that, but also only the territory that starts with WA. And when I tab off that, I'm seeing only WA, so all part numbers FX280 within the date range selected specifically for the William category or William territory. Perhaps the most powerful form of filtering is this. Instead of filtering this way, I can use the filter editor, and now I have full access to quite complex filters. So here I can say, give me those where the city is equal to Toronto. Let's spell it correctly. Or, and you can see I can do all kinds of combinations, ands, ors, add conditional groups, all kinds of things. Here I'm saying I want a report that shows me cities that are either Toronto or Mississauga. Again, you get the power of this. The concept behind this is that you don't have to have had territories set up in BusinessVision or anything set up in BusinessVision to do this kind of grouping. You just decide which of the many different fields that are available are meaningful to you, and you can get a report out very quickly based on the existing status of the data. So that's a quick run through of kind of a details module. Let's show you the difference between that and a summary module. In a summary module, what you're looking at is, instead of starting with details and then getting totals on separate pages or page breaks, here what we're seeing is you're getting totals immediately. So if I go ahead and refresh this, I'm seeing now totals from the start. So it's taking the values I've provided, in this case invoice date, month, and invoice date year, and those are generated automatically by DAnalyzer, and it's presenting that information. One neat thing here, I can graph immediately. So all I have to do to graph is just select the information I'm interested in graphing, double click on the graph, and we'll see that immediately a graph gets generated which shows me all the information I'm particularly interested in. So here's my graph showing me that last year the orange line was worse than this year, although it looks as though sales are kind of tailoring off a little bit. We're not done June, but even in May we're seeing that we're on a downward trend. This is where the analysis part becomes extremely useful, because in the analysis part you can take this further. You can say, well, is that kind of trend similar across all the different things I might be interested in looking at? So for example, if I drag territory over here, I can look at the territories individually to see if the trends are similar. Or instead of territory, I might be interested in product code, for example. If I drag that over here, is the product code breakdown the same? So here I might say, well, I'm wondering a little bit about speakers. That's a big category for me. So I can scroll down here, select speakers, select down to where I want to graph, double click, and what I'll see here is for speakers, the trend is a little bit different. It looks like it's actually dropping off even more quickly. Let's just make that a little easier to see. So what we see here is that the trend is dropping off even more quickly for speakers. So that might be a concern. Is there more competition in speakers? Are we moving away from that category? What particular things here are impacting this this change? And of course I can do that for any of the available criteria. So by city, by product code, by territory, by customer grouping, by user initials even, based on the salespeople or the internal people who are selling these items. So again, the analysis elements of this are really, really powerful, and we're not limited by the things that BusinessVision presents. We create a large number of additional fields ourselves as the creators of DAnalyzer to help you with this process. Let's look a little bit at other types of summaries or other types of reports. We looked at sales history here. You saw when we were looking at this navigation bar here that we provide things like accounts receivable and sales orders and purchase orders. I'm not going to go through all of those. Suffice it to say, the concepts though that I'm showing you here really apply across the board. For example, I might want to look at the accounts receivable summary on a regular basis. I'll refresh that, And what I'll see in the accounts receivable summary is that in this data I'm logged in June, but I'm carrying receivables back from April and May. Again, BusinessVision will provide that information in the form of a report, but it's nowhere near as quick or convenient as it is here. I can quickly look at this and say, okay, well, I'm carrying receivables from April and May, I'm in June, and I've got receivables out into July and August. And this is, of course, using the due date as opposed to the accounts receivable invoice date. So this gives me a better idea when numbers are coming in. What I might want to do, though, is look at that with or in conjunction with accounts payable, because that really forms a solid basis for parts of your cash flow. So what I'm looking at here for accounts payable is, okay, I'm in June, but in July and August, accounts payable is going to come rolling in to the tune of about $1.2 million. So again, depending on the business, this might be concerning. I have $913,000 worth of receivables, but $1.2 million worth of payables. Or maybe that's normal. But again, that helps you kind of view your business from a bird's eye view level and make determinations about what you might need to do. Go to the bank and extend your line of credit, push sales to make sure that things come in quicker. One of the nice things about these is that these are all drill downs. So if I come back to accounts receivable, one question I might ask is, well, there's $47,000 outstanding in April. What's that from? I really want to chase those receivables down because that keeps cash flow going. And here it's really easy. Just double click on it and it becomes the basis of a dunning list. I can look at these now invoices and say, okay, well, let's first group by customer and let's have a look at which customer owes us the most money, for example. So here I'm looking at two different customers here that owe me a large amount of money, $11,000 and $7,000. So again, I can chase these down. I can throw telephone number in here or email address, and this becomes a very quick way for me to first determine that in fact money is outstanding and how old it is, and then chase down the particular customers right from within this list without ever having to do anything more than just click the refresh button. Of course, there's a lot more you can do with the accounts receivable and accounts payable summary and detail reports, but that's just sort of a business case example of what you might want to do with it or what you can do with it. There are other kinds of reports in DAnalyzer. A good example of one is something called the inventory report. Now, inventory is a little different. You'll notice that inventory doesn't have a summary grid. It only has a details grid. And there's a reason for that, and the reason is that inventory is, by warehouse and part number, unique as a record. So there's no summarization necessary in the inventory module. But that doesn't mean that the inventory information isn't extremely valuable. In fact, arguably, it's some of the most valuable information you have because it tells you what you have, what you need to order, how sales are going, and so on. And there's a large number of fields that we introduce into this that allow you to see that. So we have obviously things like current cost and price, and but we have full access to all the available columns available in inventory. So that might be quantity breaks, that might be last year, this year, next year sales, all your 20 selling price levels, product code information, reorder points, back orders, committed quantities. That's all available as fields here. We even generate some specific fields. For example, this year unit sales and this year dollar sales are very useful. We even generate a field called required quantity. Let's drop that in there and talk about that a little bit. So what these are basically are summary value columns. So we take all the information out of inventory and we total that up for you. So now I can do things like sort to determine what my biggest dollar value item is. It happens to be a surround sound system. Now following that though is a personal organizer we sell. Or I can sort based on unit sales and determine which are the highest unit selling items. I probably would ignore the first one, that's for manufacturing things, but the CD800 obviously is very popular, 542 that are sold. And if I wanted to get really elaborate here, I could add all the columns to determine which months that those particular items sold in. Is this a constant thing or just a big blip from last month? That's easily determined based on these types of grids. Another example of a calculated field we add is this required quantity field. So what we do with the required quantity field, and just to demonstrate this, I'm going to take some information out of here, is I'll throw in, what do we want here, our reorder point field, our back order field, and our committed quantity field. So what that quantity, the required quantity field does is adds that information together. Let's just throw that over here so it's a little easier to see. And we'll sort that to the top. So what that list is quickly showing you now is, based on your order point and your back orders and your committed quantities from orders, it's telling you that you in fact should be concerned about ordering more of these items because you're short on stock based on the current state of those values. And that can be extremely useful information. It's just a quick click for you to determine the top items that you need to be concerned about ordering. Again, doing that individually through reports or trying to determine that without a product like the analyzer is extremely complicated and it often gets missed. Here it's really easy to do. Just add that column to a particular type of report, refresh the data, and that information is automatically calculated for you. We take this a step further though. I mean, one of the ideas behind the analyzer is to provide great management related information. One question that you might have as well, is that information perfectly accurate from the standpoint of time? And the answer is, it is perfectly accurate, but not necessarily timely. That's one of the reasons we added a new report a couple of versions back called the Inventory Planning Summary. So what the Inventory Planning Summary does is it takes that information and in terms of sales order lines and purchase order lines, and then spans that out over time. I'm going to quickly flip back to the Inventory Details module, and I'm just going to filter, and I'm going to focus on one part number, so this isn't quite so elaborate. So here's an example of a part number that I happen to pick, the TV2100. It has a reorder point of 10, a back order quantity of 14, a committed of 26, and let's throw our on order quantity in there too. That's our on order quantity is our quantity on purchase order. And what we'll see here is if I just scroll over a little bit, it's telling us that the required quantity for that part number is 0. And the reason for that is that we have an on order quantity of 59, which exceeds our back orders and committed quantities and reorder point. So it looks like we're okay. There's a problem with this though, and this report, the Inventory Planning Summary, demonstrates what that problem is. The problem with it is, and again, to make this easier, I'll filter for just the 2100, TV2100. The problem is there's a timing issue, and the timing issue goes like this. Starting in June, I have -6, meaning I'm selling 6 more than I'm bringing in, giving me a running on-hand total of 4. The following month in July, I have a running total of 4, and I'm down to 0. In August, I now am in a negative position. So in August I have a net order quantity of 9 and a negative running on hand quantity. So what that basically means is that as of August I have now actually not enough inventory to fill my requirements. Even though in summary, without taking time into account, I have enough inventory eventually, I'm falling short in August. Then of course in September our purchase order comes rolling in. We have a net plus of 59, bringing us to running on hand total of 50. So the message here basically is that even though you will eventually have the right amount of inventory, during a period of time you don't, and that could impact sales. Again, very easy to see. If I take out the filter criteria, all you have to do in this report really is run it over time and then scroll down looking for these yellow columns, and anytime you see those yellow columns, you know that you're in a position where you might have to take some sort of an action. So in this case, I'm at -40, but I have order quantities or could potentially have reorder points to fill, and this is a quick way of showing you that information. At a glance I can quickly tell exactly what it is that I have to do. One other quick thing to note, all these screens have drill downs. So if one action you might take to resolve this problem is to call somebody and ask them whether or not they can order something else, or call a vendor, for example, if you're not buying enough, all you have to do is double click on any one of these columns, and that shows you information. The customer or vendor that you're buying from, how much is coming in, all the information you'd need to take particular action. Let's look at the negative quantity here, and we can see that those are the 2 sales that are going out to the 2 separate customers. So again, you can preferentially call a customer and say you can't have it but you can, or would you prefer to switch to a different part number. So very, very useful capabilities built right into this Inventory Planning Summary, which is really a more fixed or focused example of how the analyzer can be used to solve a particular problem. So that kind of takes you through a bunch of different examples, but one question comes up and we'll clear this so we can show it to you here. One question comes up in these examples, which is, what if of all the available columns that are here, you need a column which isn't currently there? Meaning I need some sort of a calculated value or a substring of an existing part number or something like that. The answer previously was, well, you export this to Excel and then you create a formula, but of course that has the same problem as exporting to Excel when you're dealing with BusinessVision data does, which is it's not real time, it's not refreshed automatically, it's a little bit complicated, but mostly the issue is that the data becomes stale very quickly. So what we introduced in DAnalyzer across the board in all the different modules is the ability for you to add custom fields. I'll take you through a really straightforward, simple example, and then I'll show you a pre-built, somewhat more complicated example just to show you that this can be an extremely powerful concept. So how do you add a custom field? Adding a custom field is pretty straightforward. I click on the custom field button, and in this particular case I'm going to build an example where I'm going to calculate an ideal price based on the current cost. So I'll call this ideal price. And my ideal price in my business, and I've heard this example from business owners many times, is I want roughly a margin of 50%. So I'm going to choose the field current cost of all the available different fields that are here, and I'm going to multiply that times 1.5 to give me a 50% markup or margin. I can make this more elaborate, but I'll keep it simple at this point, and I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And I'll apply that so that I'm adding this to my custom field list, and I'll click on Save. And what you see here is automatically that field is dropped in. So I now have an ideal price field. And my ideal price, as we discussed, is 50% markup over my current cost. So I could, at this point, say that I'm ready to go. I can scroll down this list and look at this and determine if, in fact, the ideal price is higher than my priced one list is, or any of my 20 selling price lists. But again, that's labor intensive and time consuming. So what I want to do is add another field. So we'll go into custom fields, we'll add a new one, and we'll call this less than ideal. Less than ideal price. And I'm going to call this a Boolean field. The reason I'm using a Boolean field is I just want to make a determination if my price that's established for my ideal price is in fact higher than my price list. So I'm going to go into the expression editor, and in the expression editor what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tell me when my price list 1, so I need my fields here, so tell me when price list 1 is less than my ideal price. So this again is very powerful because I added this ideal price, but now it becomes a field that's available for me to use in addition to the normal field. So I'll go ahead and select that. I'll click on OK, and I'll apply that so that it's available in the field list, and I'll save. So we're moving the example along. In this example, what we're seeing here is that I now have checkboxes that indicate cases where the price is higher for my price list or my ideal price than it is for price list 1. So if I look at this example, based on current cost and my markup, $14.53 is what I'm expecting for a price, but in fact the price is $11.99, which is significantly lower than my margin. Again, I can sort this list or so that I have the checkboxes at the top, but I can use the features in DAnalyzer to make this even easier. I can add a filter. So here I'm just going to say my filter is checked items. So now, amongst dozens or hundreds or thousands of items, I have a nice short list of those items that I might want to review. I'll have a look and determine why, in fact, these prices aren't what I expect them to be. And of course, there might be legitimate reasons. There might be competition. There might be other reasons for why. Or it could be that the current cost has crept up on us. We didn't realize it based on buying from other vendors or price increases that our price is no longer valid. That's an incredibly difficult thing to deal with hundreds of thousands of items, with the price changing and the current cost changing and all that information. But DAnalyzer in this scenario makes it really easy. You just save this as a layout, once in a while, once a week, once a month, or even every day. You load this up, you press the refresh button, and you get a list of those items you should go back and review prices for. Very, very useful, powerful example. Let's show you one more. I won't build this one. It's a little more complicated, so I've kind of pre-built it. Let's go into the sales analysis summary area. We're going to refresh the data. Oh, sorry, not summary, detail is what I'm after. But before I do that, I'm just going to load a layout. This is a commission report that I've built. You'll notice that it has information in it about commissions. Let's load that layout. Oh, it's off to the right hand side, so there's my commission value and my commission percentage. Let's refresh that. And when the information comes in, what we're going to see is that we've grouped it based on territory, because in this example we're paying commissions based on territory. We can size these columns or scroll these columns or remove them as we see fit, but what we're seeing here is the amount of the commission and the commission percentage for each one of these territories as per how they're grouped. Let's size this down a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. So if we scroll down here, we'll see, let's move that over. We'll see for territory AB1, for example, we're paying 6% commission, and there's the commission amount on the sell price total, taking into account discounts. And if I scroll right down to the bottom of that grouping, we'll see that on $130,000 worth of sales, our expected commission is $7,824. And again, these are just totals that we've added into the system. The question you might ask at this point is, well, how can it handle this, or how does it do this in terms of calculating commissions? How does it know percentages and so on? And the answer is we've entered in an expression. Just like we could enter in an Excel spreadsheet a formula, here we've entered an expression. A quick way to edit that expression is just right-click on the column and choose Expression Editor. And here what we'll see is a somewhat more complex expression. You saw me do a really simple example of x times y to yield a result. Here what I'm doing is an expression that says a series of if statements. If it's this territory, it's this percentage. If it's this territory, it's this percentage. So again, this is just to get across not so much that you have to know this, but that there's a lot of ability in the ability for you to create these formulas. You can do math, you can do portions of fields, you can concatenate fields together. Pretty much anything that you can do in a report writer, you can do via these expressions, using the field references in conjunction with operators and constants, and of course a long list of functions that can do everything from date math to string concatenations to all the different types of math operations you might need, addition, division, the whole 9 yards, multiplication. So that's a quick run through, gets across sort of the general functionality of DAnalyzer, as well as specifics that we've added in our most recent versions, ending off on perhaps the most salient or important point in this, which is the ability for you to add formulas, or what we call expressions, into the DAnalyzer product to add your own columns, and then use those in combination with other custom fields or any fields that are available within the DAnalyzer product, and there are many. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this demo.